Hello and welcome to season 2 of the Rejection Diaries. My name's Stuart White. Tonight I am joined by author Anna Britton, who's also a freelance editor by day. And we are going to be discussing tonight her writing journey, her experience with rejections, how she's coped with them, and hopefully she'll be able to share some insights and some advice that perhaps you who is listening will be able to take and apply that to your own circumstances as well. So, first of all, Anna, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you. Yeah, it's lovely to have you on. Many of you will probably know Anna from Twitter as well. She is as much of an addict as I am and is on there quite a lot tweeting about bookish things. So, well worth a follow if you're on Twitter. We'll maybe put your Twitter handle into the
Yeah,
bio.
I can't.
Yeah.
And now you're saying that, I'm like, I feel like I should share it, but I can't quite remember what it is. So
Yeah, yeah,
we'll put it in the description. It will be really smooth.
yeah. It'll be fine. So yeah, Anna, I've obviously done a little bit of an intro, but do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I am a freelance editor. So I used to work in libraries, which was lovely because you get to be surrounded by books. But there's also quite a lot of people, which is rude. They disturb the peace. So it's really lovely. I work from home now on my little desk that you can maybe see behind me if you're watching a video. But it's a bit of my kitchen side. You know, when you cut out your sink, you get a nice big bit. So we use that to make a desk, which makes me really happy. So I work from there and I read other people's stories and hopefully give them good feedback that helps them. My dream is that it just helps them kind of dive into their stories and get excited about them again. So that's kind of what I do for a living. And then I also do writing as well for young adults and for adults. So yeah.
Do you have a favourite genre that you like to write in?
um, I kind of tend to switch back and forth. So I write YA and like sci-fi or contemporary, and then I switch to like really murdery adult crime, and then I like bounce back. And it's almost like I'm like have the darkness, and then I like switch back to nice YA where everyone has like cuddles and loves each other.
Sounds a bit like a Star Wars story there, from the light side to the dark side.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what's
so
going
thanks
on
for
in my head.
that.
The battle between the two sides.
Yeah, amazing. So I think a good place to start then is to tell everyone a little bit about where writing started for you personally. Where did it kick off? What was the motivation or the inciting instant that got you into writing?
Well, it's really interesting. I feel like because we should be talking about rejection, but
Yeah.
like I feel like I self-rejected, if that's a thing,
Hmm.
to begin with. So I've always wanted to write, and when I was little, I did the classic like wrote a story about fairies and like all that kind of stuff, and like always loved stories. And but whenever I went to put them on the page, it just kind of all fell apart very quickly. I would read back what I'd written and absolutely hated it, so I'd just like throw it away or I'd delete it if I was doing it on a computer. And for years and years and years, I just really, really wanted to be a writer, but was unable to write. Was just sort of stalling myself. Um, and then, really sadly, my father-in-law died, and he died very young and very suddenly. And it was awful for months. And then um, the thing that just kept coming back to me was you just don't know how much time you've got, and if there's something you want to do, you just need to get on and do it, even if you think you're going to be like absolutely shit at it. You kind of just need to just have a go, like just try. And if it's something that you love but you just can't seem to do, just have a go. So I got myself a little notebook from what's that, Paper Chase, which I love. And they were like the perfect size. They were quite small, so you could kind of write 2 paragraphs per page. and then you had to turn the page, and I wrote a whole book just not looking back. So I wrote my first young adult novel. I started on the 17th of January 2014, and then I finished it on the 17th of June 2014. So I didn't mean to have a spooky like 6 month like thing. And I wrote that, and it was the most like, I don't think the story's amazing, but it proved to myself that I could write a book. And yeah, I kind of stopped almost rejecting myself at that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's a very fast first book as well, 6 months.
Yeah, well, and I think it's because I just literally did not look back. I was like, it was like I was almost like running from this like wild dog or something, and I was like, don't look at it, don't look at it, because it's awful and it's horrible and it's rabid and blah. So I was just kind of like, just keep going, and I think I'd had these stories in my head for so long, and I had these like flashes of inspiration, and I'd never really acted on them before. So it was the first time that I'd like had this idea and like actually rolled with it. I hadn't stopped at the first hurdle. So I think that for me was just super exciting. Yeah, just a really fun time, really. Before I knew
And then
anything.
yeah, I know that there's something blissfully naive about that first novel where you
Yeah.
just and
Yeah.
I still I still look back at my own one, and I look back at it with fondness, but
Mm.
also know that it wasn't very good.
Oh yeah. I love it so much. And more than anything, I would love for people to read it, but also I'd like them to like never read it. And like
Yeah.
I'd kind of like to be a little bit like Jane Austen, where she got her sister to burn lots of the letters when she died so that people wouldn't find out stuff about her. And I'm kind of like, maybe that's something that needs to be burnt when I die. Because if I do ever become a published author, people should not read that. They should not know the origin story. They should just hear about it.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. And what did you do with that first book? Did you send it out to agents?
I did. So what was really lovely is really early on, I had a chat with Caroline Sheldon,
Yep.
from the Caroline Sheldon Literary Agency. So I won it was like, I live on the Isle of Wight, and it was the Isle of Wight Literary Festival, and there was like a competition for, I think it was like your first 3 pages or something. And I think it was like 10 people won little one-to-ones with her. And it was brilliant because it was the first time that anyone had taken my writing seriously. And she just talked it through with me, and she was like, that bit doesn't make sense, that like you need to do more. I think it was more like emotional stuff. You need to why should I care about them? And I was like, because I love them. She was like, that's not enough. So yeah, I had a really lovely chat with her, and she then did like a seminar off the back of it that like loads of people went to. And she said, when you're ready to query, get your book as like perfect as you can, as good as you can do it, and then you query 10 agents per month for a year. So I had my little notebook and I wrote that down. So that's what I did. So I started on the 4th of April 2017. So I had 3 years between writing the book and then starting to query it. So I wrote it all by hand, and then I wrote the second draft by hand. So, and I think I went through like a lot of drafts of it. Like I was very determined it was going to be the best it could possibly be, and still quite rubbish, but that's fine. But yeah, so I started querying 4th of April 2017, and then I stopped on the 6th of September 2018. And in between that, I got 3 full requests, which was really lovely. I came third in the Winchester Writers competition, the first page thingy. So they were like really nice boosts, like sort of those nice moments of light. I also got 113 rejections. So it was I got my final one on the 6th of September 2018, and I was done. I was like, I can't push this story anymore. Like, yeah.
And so, can you talk us through a little bit about how you sort of emotionally were dealing with that? This is your first book, your book baby. You'd gone through two handwritten drafts. That's a lot of graft.
Yeah.
Um,
It really was.
and then you and then you've sent it out, and over the course of a year or so, or just over a year, you've sent out to all the agents, and you've had 113 rejections. So,
Yeah.
what's going through your mind at that point uh, in terms of that manuscript,
Mm.
but also just about you as a writer?
Well, at first there was outrage,
Yeah,
because my book was amazing, and it was meant to be the one that never got rejected. So
yeah,
how dare they? So I feel like we all read the Writers and Artists Yearbook, and they're like, prepare yourself for rejection. Like, no, make sure you send out to lots of agents because you're casting a wide net, and like, yeah, don't get too emotionally involved. But everyone sits there going, yeah, but my book, my book's going to win.
yeah,
um, so I think at first I wasn't outraged. I think at first I was actually shocked because I was like, but I was meant to be. I was meant to be different. Like my story, I love my story so much more than they love their stories. And yeah, so I think I was quite naive to begin with. And I don't really, to be honest, it was so long ago. I remember feeling really sad um, every time I got a rejection. I really put a lot into each like query, so I really individualized them, which you absolutely should do if you've got the time and the emotional energy. But it meant that every single one, I almost felt like I'd like half made a friend, and like so I'd put all the emotional effort in, and then
yeah,
it's kind of like no, none of that. Um, I think what really helped is two of the full request. They requested a rewrite. Um, so that was basically that was just really distracting. So that all the rejections were still rolling in, but I was like, but two agents are interested. And kind of, and I do feel like their input was so valuable and kind of helped me rewrite it really well. And neither of them went um, anywhere. The sort of when I put it back in, but they did give. They were like, yes, you've definitely done a lot of work to this. It's just not quite what we're looking for.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I feel like essentially being quite distracted was helpful. um, yeah, if it's any help, so the next book I queried,
Uh-huh.
I started querying it on the 8th of January 2019, and then I stopped really quickly. I only managed to do 23 submissions for that one. And I think the reason I struggled was because I didn't have a plan. And I think with the first one, I was just doing what Caroline told me to do. So I was like, it was almost like I don't know, you're back in school and someone tells you to do something. So even if it's painful and you just keep struggling and you fall down and have to get up again, you just kind of keep going because someone's told you this is how you'll get an A, kind of. So this
Yeah.
is just keep going, and kind of it doesn't exactly work like that. But I think that's the reason I struggled with the next one so much is because I think I was a bit, I don't know if I'm naive or just a dreamer, but I was like convinced again that everyone would love it and they would fall over themselves. And then when they didn't, I think it hurt a lot more because I wasn't following the plan again, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. So that's quite. So you got your last rejection on book one in September 2018, and then you started
Yeah.
querying again in January. So had you been working on that second novel while
Yeah,
waiting for the
yeah.
first?
Yeah, so I that's something I well, as soon as I stopped writing the first book, I started writing the next, and I wrote a zombie trilogy, which will never see the light of day. It is appalling. And then I went back and wrote another YA, which was the second thing I queried. And that was like a really lovely project. I actually had a training day at the library, and we had, I don't know about other jobs, but often when we had a training day, the morning training would like finish weirdly early. So then the person for the afternoon one wouldn't be coming for like 2 hours. So we'd have this long like lunch break, which probably we were meant to like work in or something. But I didn't do that. I went off and I found a like quiet corner because I just really suddenly had this like young girl in my head whose dad had passed away, and she just couldn't make peace with it and had sort of like lost herself. And so it was really fun working on that, and I really like loved it. I felt like it was a step up from the last YA book I'd written. But yeah, sorry, I totally can't remember your. Oh, you were asking about time frame. So yeah, I'm always writing a new one.
Yeah.
I think that always helps me while querying is just writing the next one, because you're almost
Yeah.
giving your heart to something new. So it's like it's not
Yeah.
everything is engaged in querying, because I think that is really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's such an important bit of advice, which I stupidly ignored for a number of years. It took me until book 5 that I was querying to then start writing book 6 while I waited.
That's
Like
tough.
every other one, I know I was so like in hindsight, I
Mm.
would tell off younger me quite severely, but
But the thing
yeah,
is, like, querying takes so much energy and so much like emotional energy, and you are kind of tweaking the book as you go. You're tweaking your letter, you're tweaking your synopsis, so you are kind of you're using creative energy, and it can all be directed into that one project. But then it means that that one project is the only project. Whereas actually, I find it like I've sent out query letters for my most recent one where I've like after sending it to like 10 agents, I've realized I've used the word lovable twice in one sentence, and I'm like, uh, like what is wrong with you? But then I'm like, but actually maybe my letter is a little bit more slapdash than it should be. Maybe my synopsis isn't the sharpest it could be, but I'm writing another book and I'm happy. So like
yeah.
you kind of got to weigh it up, haven't you?
There really is nothing like pressing send to notice a
Oh,
typo or
it's so awful. Like I don't understand what happens to our brains that like we read it 100 times, and then as soon as you press send, you're like, oh my gosh, I compared one of my books with my first book to Alice Osman. I don't even know how to say her name. And I
yeah,
definitely don't know how to spell it because I spelt it wrong in all my queries. And it had the little red line underneath. But I was like, oh, that's just because the computer is stupid and it doesn't know how to spell names. But actually, I am stupid and I don't know how to spell names. So, but I managed to get 3 full requests
yeah,
spelling someone's name wrong. So there you go.
yeah. So what then happened with book 2? You said that you sent out 29 queries and then stopped.
Yeah, so, sorry, it was 23, but don't worry.
Yeah.
Like to get my facts right. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I I don't know. I think maybe I should have taken more time off before I started querying it. Because it was only like I don't know. I'm not good at maths. Like 5 months, maybe. I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
I think maybe I should have taken more time, and I just wasn't. I didn't have the fight in me for it. So I kind of parked that one, and then my third young adult book, um, which I absolutely love. I in the 2019 WowCon, I bought a couple of agent one-to-ones, and I didn't think it was ready. I it ready to query. I mean, I didn't think it was ready to go out into the world, but I was like, I feel like this is a great opportunity to just have an agent read the first couple of pages and just tell me, am I on the right track at all? And for me, those 2 one-to-ones were the best lesson in subjectivity that I've ever had. Because I had the first one was with a lovely agent who I really admire, and she absolutely hated it. And she probably wouldn't have put it in those words, but she was really, really like just everything about it, essentially. She was like, no, you need to add in more backstory. I don't like the main character. I don't understand the setting. Like, you need to bulk up the plot. You need to do this, you need to do that. And it was one of those phone calls where you're like smiling and nodding, and then as soon as it stops, you're crying and so on. so that was brutal. So I then had another one booked for the next day that I was like, oh no, like like why did I book two? But they absolutely loved it, and they loved the characters, they loved the setting, they loved the backstory. It was like I kept saying to them, like, are you sure? Like, I don't. And I think they were completely baffled by me, because they were like, why is this woman so adamant that her story is crap? Like, I'm telling her it's great. But I just kept being like, are you sure? And she asked twice for me to send the full during that chat. And I genuinely had to then email them afterwards and say, like, did you actually want me to do that? Because I'm not sure. My confidence is low. But yeah, so from there, that agent requested the full, and they then offered me representation, which was lovely. So I think that was in January 2020. What year are we now?
21.
2021.
Yeah.
January 2021. I had got an agent, and no, not January 2021.
2020.
2020.
Yeah.
Maths is really hard. So yeah, I got an agent, and that was really lovely for a while. And had a year and a half with them. Yeah, but then things didn't quite work out.
So what have you been working on recently? Have you got something else lined up that possibly you'll be querying in the future?
Yeah, so I'm actually querying something now, because I'm unable to not. So I split with my agent in April this year, which was like really painful.
Yeah.
But kind of I don't know what it is about writing. I'm not. I don't know. In other areas of my life, I kind of, you take a knockback and you kind of reevaluate, don't you? And you do things differently, and kind of maybe decide maybe it's not worth it. But with writing, I'm like, no, I can't stop. I can't like it is. I feel like genuinely it's one of the only things I'm good at. So I'm like, I've got to keep going, because otherwise what will I do with my life? So I kind of, it was a really horrible splitting with my agent, and I was really so sad about it. But almost immediately I was like, well, I've got to go out and get another one then. And I stopped working on the projects I was working on, just because they were kind of tied up in what that agent, sort of the direction we were going in. And I started working on a crime novel, an adult crime novel, which I know at some point I'll have to be shunned by the right mentor community for writing an adult book. But I feel like you can maybe still be my secret friends. So so I'd already written the first draft of it, and I had loads and loads of ideas, and it wasn't a book that that agent was particularly interested in working on. They were predominantly a young adult agent, so it felt quite freeing, because I was like, oh, I can work on my adult crime again. So yeah, I completely rewrote it, and I did it like, and completely rewrote it. So I printed the whole thing out and then like typed every word for word, because I was like, I want them all to be perfect and beautiful. So yeah, so I've sent out 22 submissions so far, and had 6 rejections, which, to be honest, like, I don't know if it's because of where my head's at the moment, but we're almost like a, yeah, okay, that's what should happen, which is probably an awful like way to be thinking about it, but kind of like, yeah, it just felt like a confirmation of like, oh, okay, I've written another rubbish one again. But on the flip side of that, I've also had 6 full requests. So yay. So, and two, and just for balance, I've already had 2 of those end in rejection already. So I've got 4 out at the moment. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at the moment with querying. And the weird thing is, I'm having a very odd reaction to the full request. In that, like, rejections, I'm like, yes, okay, like, nod along, that's fine. When I get the full request, I almost have like a mini breakdown each time, because I'm like I first of all, I'm just completely confused, because I'm like, but that's exactly what I want to happen, but not at all what I think is going to happen. And just, I think, just because of the experience I've had very recently, of things ending quite badly, I think there's just that kind of all that is bringing all that up. So I am very pleased, and I feel so grateful to have these full requests, but they all are also causing me quite a lot of stress, which is very
Uh,
bizarre.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? The
Mm,
contrast, because I guess, like, for a lot of people, it's party time when they get a full
mm,
request, and and
yeah.
it's the rejections that really get them down. But it's
Mm.
interesting how your mentality's flipped.
It's bizarre, because I think when I wrote my first book, when I got the requests for that, I was over the moon, and it was such a boost. It like, and because I, for that one, I was determined to keep going for a year, having those moments along the way where it's like, ah, someone likes me, which isn't what you should think about yourself. It's a book; they're not rejecting you, but also that's what we all feel. So
Yeah,
I kind of, I at that point, they were full requests were like the, well, they're the step on the way, aren't they? They're exactly what you need. Um, so it is really bizarre. Like, I really recognize that the way I'm reacting now is probably unhealthy and unhelpful, probably. But it's really hard, because I'm not going to deny how I'm feeling. Like, it's throwing up a lot of sort of complex emotions, and kind of, yeah, it's very strange. I sort of every time I text writing friends, because I feel like they kind of get it the most, even if they don't understand my sort of particular neuroses. And I kind of text them and say like, "Oh, I've got another full and I'm crying," and they're like, "It's okay." It's gonna be okay. And then, yeah, so it's very bizarre, sort of totally flips
yeah.
on its head.
I wonder if that's actually more common though than people
Mm,
realise. I'm not sure it's necessarily something that a lot of people would share, and so maybe by you sharing that
mm,
with everyone in the program, other people will listen to this and think, "Oh, I'm exactly like that," and
mm.
that will bring them some comfort as well.
Well,
Um,
yeah, hopefully, because I think there's a whole culture out there, isn't there? Of, obviously, I'm incredibly grateful. Like, I'm not I'm not taking that away. Like, I'm so thankful for that those agents have recognised something in my writing, and that they're interested enough to request a full. Like, that is a wonderful thing. Um, but yeah, underneath that, there is this like burbling sense of like, just, I guess, like stress of like, I know how this can go, and I and I don't want that to happen again. And kind of, and yeah, and just, I think there is stress related to like, to getting close to what you want and not getting it. Like, that is really painful, because we all dream dreams, don't we? And but you
mhm.
start to more concretely sort of imagine what could happen, and, oh, I actually could be friends with this person, and we could publish this book, and like, I'll go to London and we'll have coffee together, and it will be really fun. And um and then actually, like, yeah, sort of when those things don't happen, or when they happen but they don't kind of turn out how you expect them to, it can be, yeah, really difficult. So essentially, I'm quite
Yeah,
stressed at the moment. So but
but I mean,
maybe when this goes out, I'll be less stressed. You can see how I'm doing. I'll
yeah.
probably be like weeping either way, because that's just my set response.
But I genuinely think, I certainly can relate to how you're feeling it, and what you were saying there about it is tougher when you're closer to
Mm,
getting what you want, and then you don't finally make it. Because I know I've certainly been in that position a lot,
yeah.
over the last decade or so, and you know, like for example, I'm on a list for something at the moment, and if I get to the next stage, then that's like it's like huge. It's like, you know, a
Yeah.
big opportunity, and but I've also been at this stage twice before,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
not get past it, and so I can, you know, I'm putting, I think I'm trying not to, but I'm putting a lot of hope on that,
Mm,
and I wonder if I'm not successful, if actually I'll deal with that better than if I am, you know,
mm,
if I do progress, because suddenly then it gets scarier because you're
mm,
getting closer to what you want, and so yeah, there's definitely something relatable there to what you were saying,
mm.
you know, with your requests and so on, and I'd put a lot of money down right now that there are people listening who feel similarly.
Well, yeah, if you do, feel free to reach out and we can just like
Yeah, yeah.
cry over our good news together. But it's really interesting. I read a thing recently about grief and about
Mm.
like some grief is really simple, like you lose someone, you um a bad thing happens and you are sad. But some grief is much more complex because you want something and you don't get it, but you never had it. So how can you grieve for it?
Yeah,
And that for me is really interesting because, like, losing my agent earlier this year, we hadn't actually really gotten anywhere. Like we'd worked on a story together. We'd both really liked it. During COVID, we'd stopped working on it because it was set after a virus killed everyone, and that felt icky. So so we'd kind of worked on other things, but we'd never kind of gotten past the point of like revising and working together. So really, if you think about it, I hadn't really lost anything. I didn't have a publisher deal. I didn't have a next step. But I do feel that I am in a way grieving and feeling that sadness, but it's for something that I never really had. And that's a really sort of, I think when we're querying, we're putting so much hope out there, aren't we? And so much like we really desperately want this, like this is our dream, and we have to grieve for not getting that, even though it's something we never had. I don't know if that makes sense.
no, no, it does.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And it's one of those. It might not be relatable to a lot of people, but to
Mm.
writers, I think they'll
Yeah.
get that.
It's a really hard thing to talk about with non-writers.
Yeah,
Um, and I find it hilarious splitting the world up that way because there's obviously much better ways of splitting up the world, or maybe we shouldn't split up the world at all. But
yeah,
it's really interesting. Like I talk to normal people, and I say, oh, I got 4 requests, and first I have to explain that no, it's not from a publisher. No, my book won't be in Waterstones next week. You need to calm down. And then when I finally explain what an agent is, and how they're kind of like a stepping stone and an advocate and a champion, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, like that's really great. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And then I go and talk to writers and I'm like, oh, you so get me. This is so helpful. I don't have to explain everything. That was one of the gutting things about losing an agent, is that I was so sad, but most of my friends didn't understand why.
yeah,
And I had to go and say to them like, oh, really sad things happened, and then explain the whole context of the industry first before I could then say, oh, and then this thing's happened to me and that's really rubbish. Which is bizarre.
yeah, yeah. Okay. One thing I was really keen to ask you,
Mm.
Anna, was if you could go back and speak to the Anna of 2014, that was, you know, that was starting out in that first novel, and you could give them some of your hard-earned experience and knowledge from, you know, the last 7 years or so. What would you say? Is there any advice or kernels of knowledge you'd pass on?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I love the Anna from back then. Because
Yeah.
she's the Anna from now who loves writing and was just falling in love with it. And I don't think I'd want to tell her anything because she would be horrified. I think I would rather talk to the Anna of who had that agent full request that then became an offer of representation. And I think I'd rather talk to her and say it's okay to ask really specific questions. It's okay to, if you're not feeling sure, it's okay to vocalize that. And I was very I think it's really hard. There is a power imbalance at times between agent and client, and particularly at the point of like signing. And I think I really played into that, and I didn't speak up. And I think I'd talk to her and say, like, actually, if, and I don't think this would have happened with this agent because they were lovely, but um, it's okay to speak up, and if you don't, then get an agent because you've been truthful and honest and and kind of said what you need to say and asked the questions you need to, then actually they weren't the right agent for you. Yeah, I think I'd rather talk to her and kind of just, yeah, give her a bit of oomph. I think anyone who gets an offer of representation, like, that's so, like, it's beyond wonderful, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to take that feeling away from past me for anything, but I would want to just temper it with a bit of like, just take a moment, just kind of just just really ask deep questions. Do a rewrite. You don't have to sign right now. Do a rewrite and then sign, and kind of, yeah, just don't rush, Anna.
Yeah.
um,
That's such good advice.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it really is.
Yeah.
I've been in a similar situation actually,
Mm.
and there'll be a lot of writers out there who they wouldn't they wouldn't hesitate, or they would hesitate to ask questions,
Yeah.
and to quiz people who are in a perceived position of power.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
that's really good
that's
advice.
totally the right word, because it is perceived. They
Yeah,
are their people,
yeah,
and they're lovely people, and they
yeah,
are flawed people,
yeah,
and it's, they don't know everything. They know a lot, and they are really helpful. But actually, and it's okay to talk to them like a person. Um, and I think that it's just so hard, isn't it? We follow them on Twitter. We pass over our babies to them and say, "Please love
yeah.
me."
They
So when they
become
do,
like our,
yeah,
yeah, they're like our deities that we,
yeah,
all hail the
absolutely, and
agents.
that's so messed up, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
then you suddenly have to like work with them as an equal, and like, I
yeah,
guess that's like maybe what I'd say to myself as well, is like, just take a little bit of time to get to know the agent, take a bit of time to kind of watch them make at least one mistake, and
yeah,
like sort of just bring them down to a human being level, rather than being sort of special and up there.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I think that's a lovely note for us to finish up on, Anna. So can I just say thank you so much for joining me. I really, really enjoyed that. You were so honest and insightful and truthful as well. That's it was really lovely of you to share so much of your experience, and I know that there'll be people listening just now who will gain so much from it. So thank you very much.
No, thank you, and thank you, Stuart, for like putting these on. These are genuinely like my favourite podcasts. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's nice. Thanks, Anna.
Bit of flattery back and forth there.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Cheers.